Hey there, innovation champions. Melissa Dinwiddie here. Picture this. It's December, and I'm sitting in a living room with 11 other people launching what we think will be a small local community action group. Our stretch goal is 50 members. Fast forward just 3 months, and we are suddenly over 220 members strong. We got multiple teams, multiple projects, and a communication stream that one of our leadership team members aptly described as a fire hose. Sound familiar to any startup founders out there? But here's where things get really interesting. Unlike most modern organizations, we actually have the luxury of being able to call an in-person meeting and actually make it happen fairly easily because this is a local group that we started. For distributed teams across different time zones and different geographies, that's simply not an option. So what happens to innovation when you can't all be in the same room together? Does creativity suffer? Do breakthrough ideas become harder to find? Well, after experiencing this rapid growth and working with tech and marketing teams across the globe for years, I have discovered something surprising. Distance doesn't have to diminish innovation. In fact, with the right approach, distributed teams can actually out-innovate their in-office counterparts. Let me show you how using, take a guess, my Create the Impossible framework. So if you've followed me at all, you know that my framework has 3 steps. And the first step is play hard. And again, this does not have anything to do with, the work hard, play hard dichotomy or supposed dichotomy. Play hard is all about embracing your inner 4-year-old, following your curiosity, experimenting, exploring. And here we are talking about building trust across distances. The foundation of innovation in distributed teams is not about fancy technology, it's trust. And without the organic trust building that happens naturally in physical spaces, we have to be really intentional about creating psychological safety across distances. And I got to tell you that one of the most powerful moments in my community group came during a phone call, just a simple phone call with one of my, one of my leadership team members. We were discussing a really challenging situation. Actually, it had to do with the fact that me being at the helm, I am the figurehead, I'm the founder. I am the one who sends the emails that everybody gets. I am the one who leads the big meetings for over 100 people. Our last meeting was, and anytime anyone has a question or a concern or a complaint, I'm the person they email, and I have to get that off my plate because I simply do not have the bandwidth to deal with all of those communications on top of all the other stuff that I'm doing for the organization and for my own business. And so we're trying to figure out how to manage that. And because this other team member and I had established this really deep trust, and because she felt completely comfortable challenging my perspective and offering wildly different approaches, we, she could offer some crazy ideas, and the conversation sparked an innovative solution that neither of us would have discovered on our own. So we didn't need any crazy wild tech or AI. We just needed the conversation over the phone. So How do you build this kind of trust in distributed teams? First, you got to create intentional spaces for connection before you dive into content. So, in my distributed client workshops, and a lot of the work that I do with organizations, with companies, is distributed, it's virtual. I always start with connection. I always start with activities that might seem, inefficient, but they actually lay the groundwork for innovation. And one really simple activity that I love is called Rose, Thorn, Bud. It's so easy. Anyone can do this. Each team member shares something really beautiful in their life right now that's represented by a rose. And they also share a challenge that they're facing, and that's represented by a thorn. And they share something that they're looking forward to, which is represented by a bud. So they use the metaphor of a rose, a thorn, and a bud. And each person shares using that metaphor. And it's these moments of human connection that create the psychological safety that's necessary for people to share their wildest ideas without fear of judgment. Now, when people feel safe to take risks without fear of embarrassment or fear of rejection, that's when creativity flourishes, regardless of physical location. So that's step one. Play hard. Step two is make crap. And here we're talking about embracing digital imperfection. So this second element of my Create the Impossible framework means giving ourselves permission to create imperfect first drafts rather than waiting for perfection. And this becomes even more crucial in distributed environments where the temptation is to only share polished work, and that becomes even stronger when we're in these distributed environments. We don't have that casual, hey, what do you think of this moments that happen really naturally in offices. So distributed teams need to very intentionally create spaces for sharing work in progress. So in my community action group, even though we don't have a dedicated digital channel specifically for half-baked ideas, although I think maybe I will suggest that at the next leadership team meeting, we have cultivated an environment where people feel really comfortable saying, this is just a thought, but what if we, dot, dot, dot. And it's this willingness to share our incomplete thinking that has been really vital to our rapid growth and problem solving. And we're growing so fast that we have to be constantly open to to making crap. That's just the reality. So for tech teams, this might look like creating a dedicated digital space where unfinished ideas are welcome, whether it's a Slack channel or whatever other tool you use. Create a channel that is specifically for unfinished ideas. Or it might look like starting meetings with an explicit invitation to share terrible first attempts. Or it might look like using collaborative tools to collectively iterate on ideas together. Because remember, innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It emerges from collision and iteration. And in distributed teams, we need to create intentional spaces for those collisions to happen, because they're not going to happen from people bumping into each other at a water cooler, right? So that's step two, make crap. Step three in the framework, learn fast. And here we're talking about creating feedback loops across time zones. Here's that final element of my Create the Impossible framework, learn fast, turning every experience especially failures, into learning opportunities. Now, this becomes more challenging and also more critical in distributed teams. We don't have real-time feedback. Learning cycles, as a result, can slow down dramatically. And in my rapidly growing community group, we're still developing many of these processes, but we are already seeing the value of documenting our journey and documenting our decisions. And this documenting it's not just about record keeping, it's a learning tool that allows us to reflect on what's working and reflect on what needs adjustment. Now, for distributed teams, implementing effective feedback loops might include simple reflection questions. After meetings or project milestones, think about posing questions like, what worked well? What could be improved? What are we going to try next time? It might also look like regular learning reviews. Schedule dedicated time to reflect on what your team is learning. This is separate from project status updates. It might also look like accessible documentation. Make your team's processes, their decisions, their learnings available in shared spaces where everyone can access and build upon them. Does that sound like yes and from improv? It certainly does. Now, these practices help ensure that insights don't get lost across time zones and that teams can learn collectively, despite physical separation. All right, now let's put all of this together into a practical playbook for fostering innovation in distributed teams. So here's some steps to take. First of all, leverage technology thoughtfully. Be really strategic about creating different spaces for different types of interaction. So, for example, synchronous video is great for emotional connection and complex problem solving, whereas asynchronous channels like chat, you're going to want to use, or Slack, you're going to want to use for reflection and idea development. Then you want to have shared documents for collaborative exploration. So make sure that you're using all these different channels for the purposes that they're best for. Second of all, create collisionable hours. Innovation often emerges from these unexpected collisions between ideas and people. And in distributed teams, we need to very intentionally create these opportunities because they're not going to happen randomly. So designate specific times when team members across time zones can connect and create some virtual spaces where informal conversation is encouraged. And then also pair people from different functions for regular collision conversations. Third, you want to establish clear communication norms. Without the context of physical space, distributed teams need really explicit norms. Excuse me. So, for example, which channel is appropriate for which type of communication? Make that really clear. What response times are expected for different types of messages? And how should people signal when they're in deep work mode versus when they're available for collaboration? So clarify that and set some guidelines and policies and make it really clear. And then fourth, maintain open communication. You want to foster an environment where ideas can flow freely. So implement an open door policy for sharing thoughts and suggestions, and really listen really attentively to team members' input and provide constructive feedback. People really value that. Also, you really want to celebrate and share creative successes to motivate the team. That really makes a difference. Remember, the goal is not to try and recreate the office experience online. You're never going to do that. A virtual experience, a hybrid experience, a distributed experience is going to be different. You're not trying to mimic an office experience. The goal is to leverage the unique advantages of distributed work and create something even better. So let's talk about the power of distributed creativity. What I find most fascinating about distributed innovation is that when it's done right, it can actually unlock creative potential that might remain dormant in traditional settings. Without the conformity pressure that often exists in physical spaces, distributed team members might actually feel more freedom to express unconventional ideas. Think about the nurse working from her home office. She might feel empowered to challenge the CEO's perspective in a virtual meeting in ways that she might not in a boardroom. The asynchronous nature of distributed work also allows for deeper reflection. Rather than being put on the spot to respond immediately to an idea, team members can sit with the concepts, they can process them fully, they can return with more thoughtful contributions. And the diversity inherent in distributed teams, not just cultural diversity, but diversity of environments, diversity of contexts, that can spark connections that wouldn't emerge when everyone is sharing the same physical space. So here's your challenge for this week. Identify one small way to enhance innovation across your distributed team. Maybe it's creating a dedicated space for half-baked ideas, or perhaps it is implementing a no slides rule for one meeting to encourage more authentic communication. Or it could be as simple as starting your next virtual gathering with a human connection moment before diving into the agenda. Maybe you're going to try out the rose, thorn, bud activity. Whatever you choose. Remember that innovation isn't about location. It's about creating the conditions where creativity can flourish, no matter where your team members happen to be. Ready to transform how your distributed team approaches innovation? Click the link in the description to book a complimentary innovation strategy session. And let's explore how the Create the Impossible framework can help your organization build powerful creative connections across distances. If you found this exploration of distributed innovation valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of innovation champions. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new strategy for driving innovation in your organization. I would love to know your thoughts on this topic. What strategies have you found most effective for fostering creativity across distributed teams? What unexpected benefits have you discovered from working across distances? Share your insights in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay playful, and keep creating the impossible, no matter where your team members happen to be. See you next time. Ciao.